Hello everyone, I didn't make any videos last week because I went to visit my grandma and my computer was home and stuff like that, so I took a little bit of a break. But I'm back with another video. Today I'm gonna do top 5 best decks I ever played. I should clarify a little bit. It's possible that, at certain points I played like a deck that was maybe better than some of these, but I just don't really remember, or I didn't do well with it. Like, it's possible that some deck that I played was just really good for that specific tournament, but I just happened to not really do that well, so I don't really remember. Also, I just think it would be kind of weird to talk about some random deck that I played at some random event. So it's gonna be more of top 5 decks that I also did well with. There are some decks that also come to my mind that I didn't really include. If I should name some examples, for example, I played this green-black mid-range deck with Jade Light Rangers and Vivians in one of the Japanese GPs that I X2'd with and stuff like that. But I just I don't know. I think these 5 decks, I just felt really good during the tournament. It's not, this video isn't about when the deck would face each other, which one would be better. But it's how good it was given the meta game, and how good it was for the tournament basically. I did really well with all of these decks that I'm going to talk about. Let's just make myself smaller, and yeah, let's get into it, I guess. So coming up at number 5 is actually not this one. It's Bant Company that I finished second at Grand Prix Rimini, losing to the master Arnie Huschenbeck. It was actually crazy. The first game, I just didn't realize that he was playing Declaration in Stone, because most decklists didn't, and I was in a winning position, and I was just usually it wasn't really about attacking. It was just about who generates a better position in the game, gets more cards with tireless truckers and stuff, and eventually you kind of kill them. But it's not really about just cheesing out a couple of damage and stuff like that. And yeah, by the way, that's different post board because there's Tragic Arrogance, but this was game 1. But yeah, I thought I got into a position where I can start attacking, and I just attack with a lot of creatures, and I kept only 3 Reflector Mages back. Arnie drew a card, he cracked a clue, and then he went Declaration in Stone, Spell Queller to counter my 2 Spell Quellers or something crazy like that. That just seems that I was super unlucky to lose that game, but I could have just very easily played around that by attacking with fewer creatures. And yeah, it felt pretty bad to lose that finals, especially given the fact that Arnie actually proposed to have a split right before the finals, but I was just so confident that I declined, so that cost me $2,000 or something. So that's unfortunate. In the second game, I actually didn't play around the fact that he can have a Evolving Wilds. He played 1 or something, and I didn't kill his Chase because he had only 3 cards in his graveyard. And I think I wanted to keep up Queller for potential, a company or something. So I just kept my options open, but he went Evolving Wilds, it goes immediately into a graveyard, so I just couldn't kill it anymore, and that kind of snowballed into me losing the game. So I felt really bad about losing that finals, but props to Arnie. He did make some mistakes, obviously. We were both under the pressure of playing a GP finals, so he forgot to make some clues and stuff, but overall he obviously played really well. And as we could see recently, he was doing really well. He won the Pro Tour and stuff like that. So if I had to lose to finals, he was definitely one of the opponents that it's fine to lose to, I guess. So it was actually an interesting tournament. So there was a Pro Tour before this GP, and Bant Company actually didn't do that well, and that was because Emrakul was printed, I think. And everyone kind of knew that Bant Company was the deck to beat going to the tournament, so people were just ready for it. So despite the great power of Bant Company, if you directly target it, you can maybe get like a slight edge over it. Also, people really didn't really know what the metagame is going to be. Like, it sounds crazy now, but people actually, like a lot of people actually didn't know that Emrakul was so broken and stuff like that. So, you know, they didn't really have the right sideboard against it. Like, for example, you can see the Samurai Dismissals here that can counter Emrakul and stuff like that. People didn't necessarily have that, and, you know, Bant Company actually didn't do that well. Which made it actually, ironically, a super good choice for the next GP. Because overall, it was clearly the best deck. It just like didn't necessarily do that well at the Pro Tour because people were just like, you know, it was a bunch of pros. So if they chose a different deck, they like at least had a really good plan against Bant Company. But that isn't necessarily the case at the GP. At the GP, you're gonna have like a larger portion of just like random decks. You know, some people also like maybe think, oh, Bant Company maybe isn't that good, and they just like pick a deck that's like good against the other decks, or they just think that Bant Company is just one of the decks in the meta game, and they just like pick something random or don't respect it as much. And also, it's just like a mid-range deck with infinite card draw and company. So if you know what to expect, you can like tune your sideboard against the expected meta game, because it's not like at the GP people are going to come up with something new. They're just gonna play the decks from the Pro Tour. And yeah, it was just great. Like, I started playing Mirrors deep into day 2, obviously, but like in day 1, I just played against a lot of random decks and stuff, and it just felt like one of the, you know, one of the tournaments where you just like clearly have the best deck, but since it was like a week after the Pro Tour where Company didn't do that well, not like that many people played it. So yeah, that was a pretty good tournament. I actually think that was when they changed the GPs. You could made it to day 2 with like a 6-3 record, and I think I was like 6-1, and then I 6-0 day 2 and like ended up 8 on breakers. I actually have the most GP X2s that didn't turn into top 8 in the entire world. I have 4. 2 of them are like 9 places, and 2 of them are like some random top 16 places because it was in Japan where the GPs are huge. But yeah, it's at least a little bit made up for, you know, with the fact that I was able to sneak into top 8 with X21 here and ended up 2nd. So yeah, that was Bant Company. Now looking at the deck list, you know, there are some like, for example, I don't really understand this like Gnarlwood Dryad. It's possible that it was just like randomly good against some of the aggressive decks like Mono Red and stuff. But that just seems kind of bad. I think I just should have played like 3rd Tragic Arrogance or like 3rd Samurai Dismissal or something. But anyway, this is what I played. Another thing interesting about my deck list is that most people played Avacyn in the Ojutai's command slot. And I agree that Avacyn was like slightly better in the mirror. But in my testing, I found that it doesn't really make that big of a difference. Like, command is like still a strong card. You have a lot of like cheap creatures, especially with like Selfless Spirit and stuff, you can always sack it. So like the only problem with it was that, you know, sometimes you pass with it and they just pass right back at you, having company, and then it's like maybe not as strong. You can still bring a guy back and draw cards, so it's fine. But the difference against the other decks in the metagame was insane, and as I kind of explained in the beginning, I thought that the metagame is gonna be more wider. So I just thought that overall having command is gonna give me a higher win percentage against the field. Like the field was like Emrakul decks with like Ishkanag. Ojutai's command is great against Ishkanag, because otherwise that card is like really annoying against you. You have like a bunch of small creatures with like spirits and stuff, and you're like trying to kill them quickly before they can Emrakul. So they're just trying to buy a time with Ishkanag, and command was really good at, you know, beating that. And it was always insane against like the blue-red deck that, you know, people started playing. With like the Fevered Vision. I don't know if you guys know what that card is, but it was like a mono red burn deck splashing for Fevered Visions. It's like the enchantment that deals 2 at the end of your turn if you have certain amount of cards. I don't remember exactly. And, you know, command was insane against those. It was also better against the aggressive decks and stuff like that. So yeah, I just think that playing command was really good for me. I actually even played against Lucas Blohon in the top 8, and game 1 I won super close game where I was able to gain 4 with command. I ended the game at like 2 life or something, so if it was Avacyn I would definitely lose, so you know. that's that. Let's go for the deck number 4. So the 4th best deck I chose, it's kind of random. I just like, you know, it's possible that the 3rd deck was burst or whatever. It doesn't really matter for the purposes of this video. But I chose the 4th best deck that I chose was 4-color Copycat. So there's another interesting story about this. So I don't actually think I was even in the team with Brett Nelson during this tournament, but for some reason, I don't know if like I messaged him or like he maybe messaged me for you know just to make sure about his deck list. I don't know the details, but anyway, I got a deck list from Brett Nelson and I played it, and I actually changed a couple of cards. I think I changed like 3 cards. I played Tamiyo and they didn't play it, but I actually find Tamiyo to be really good. It was a great tool to beat the Mardu decks because the way you lost to Mardu most of the time was Gideon, and Tamiyo just allowed you to like play it, tap their like Heart of Kiran or whatever blocker they had, and just kill the Gideon. The reason why people didn't really play Tamiyo because you just didn't really want to have that many expensive sorcery cards when people are trying to kill you with combo. But I just found that overall the power of the card was worth it. It's even possible I should have played 2. If you look at the finals, or even maybe semi-finals of the GP that I actually won this GP, Tamiyo was huge in all the games. Like I was just able to easily kill a Gideon with it. Like they just had Gideon with like 2 creatures out, and suddenly they lost their Gideon, their creatures were tapped, and you had Tamiyo in play. It was just so good. I actually also think that everyone was just playing out of Chandra because you can just like blink it and stuff like that, and it works well with Chandra. But I actually think that like playing a little bit more after this tournament, I found that playing Shock would probably be better just because you can disrupt the combo in the mirror, and you can like shock down the Planeswalker from Mardu. For example, they have like a Gideon, you have like a Virtuoso, you can make like 2 top tiers attack, you can shock it and stuff like that. So you know the deck list definitely wasn't perfect, but it was really good. I'm not sure I would be able to win the GP without Brad's deck list. It gave me I didn't play I don't remember what else I changed, but I didn't play exactly his version. But he gave me like the skeleton, and then I like built on top of it a little bit, and ended up with this deck list that was great. I probably shouldn't have played all of these like naturalized effects in the sideboard, because as I was going through the tournament, I found out that the Mardu players were just like boarding out a lot of their artifacts and like Toolcraft exemplars, and they were just boarding in like Painful Truths, a bunch of Planeswalkers and stuff like that. So you just often was stuck with like 2 or 3 of these effects in your hand, and you lost. The way I ended up boarding in that matchup in the end was that I just like assumed that they're gonna go for the mid-range plan, because they just always did. And I was just like bringing in like Negates, Tireless Tracker, Sky Sovereign is obvious, and maybe only like 2 release agreements. They still like need to keep some of their artifacts in, like some Heart of Kiran Scroungers and stuff like that. So like sometimes it's still good. But yeah, that's just the way I board it. I actually even boarded out of Chandra, which just sounds crazy against an aggro deck, but they just board out all of their Toolcraft exemplars, and they have like Old Nixilis, Painful Truths and stuff like that, so this just didn't really work against them that much. It's possible that it's possible that I just like went a little bit too overboard, and if they figure it out, especially when they were on the play and just went like with the aggro plan, I would have lost. But no one really ever did that. Like I was like hedging a little bit during the tournament. I was like, oh, maybe he's gonna do it. So when I was on a draw, I had like 1 or 2 out of Chandras, but it just like literally never did it. So as I was going, with like every single round, I was just going like more heavy, more like late game oriented, and I think that's actually the reason why I won the GP. I don't think that the other Saheeli players were necessarily doing that, and they were just losing the late game to the Mardu deck. Whereas I just had like, a bunch of trackers, Negates and stuff against their Planeswalker deck, so that was good. Also, Corey Baumeister, the brother of Brett Nelson, won the GP the same day with the same deck list. We were like 3 cards different, so that's a great story. I actually tested with their team the following year, so we were often joking about that together. The 3rd deck I chose is actually kind of recent. I think it's like 1 or 2 years back. This was the Modern Pro Tour, and I was testing with I think it was called like MTG Min Card team or something. You know, on the team it was like I actually, when I entered the team, there was still Andrea Mengucci and Javier, but for this Pro Tour, they decided to test alone, and you know, we had Luis Salvato and Sebastian Pozzo, and also Amas on the team, and like Jeremy Desani. It was actually kind of a new team. There was the Li Shitian, but besides that, it was like a completely different team. But we ended up with this blue-white control deck. That was great. Almost no one played it in the tournament. I think the meta game was like Dredge, Phoenix, like Tron, and Humans. So it was like extremely tricky to find the right version. Like with these type of decks, if you this deck doesn't really have like that much power. So if you have more wider meta game, or you just gonna guess it wrong and you don't have the right tools, you can't really win. But I think we just like had it like, you know, it was just like exactly how it should have been. Like we were pondering about the last sideboard card for like the last remaining 2 days. You know, I was playing Infinite, and Jeremy I think as well with this deck. Before I actually went even into the testing team, Sebastian and Luis Salvato were playing with it a lot as well. So we just had everything, like we just knew that we won this, like we won one oust, we won 2 detention spheres, and you know, the small stuff like that. We actually even had like a Ghost Quarter, and then we were like played more and found out that it's better without it. You know, we found that we won like 1 Spell Pierce. Most of the versions played like Spell Snare instead, but we just kind of found that Spell Pierce was just a lot better, because there was even against like Dredge and stuff like that, you can often stop them. Against Humans, you can counter Ether Vial. Obviously, Spell Snare would be better there, but you know, we just had like everything. Like, for example, we had only 3 Wrath of Gods, but we kind of realized that against Humans, we don't have enough cards to bring in, so we need to have additional card. So we had like 1 Wrath of God and 1 Day of Judgment, which was better against Meddling Mage and stuff like that. And yeah, the deck list was great. I think I went 8-2 with it. I lost to Humans and Phoenix, I think. But yeah, I just felt really like powerful during the tournament, especially given the fact that it was like a Pro Tour and we had like a kind of a deck that wasn't necessarily considered tier 1. But we were able to find the right version, and we did pretty well with it. I think Jeremy did pretty well. He went like 7-3. And Luis Salvato went 8-2 with it. Unfortunately, he went 0-6 in draft, so that didn't really ended up working out so well for him. But the deck was great. I really enjoyed playing it. Actually, the last round I played against Rafael Levy, which was also on our team, but he played Tron. And oh, that's another matchup where Spell Pierce was really good against Tron. Like, Spell Snares can still counter Sylvan Scrying, but Spell Pierce was just like really good against them, especially the fact that it can counter like the Oblivion Stone. You can even counter Karn with it, and like sometimes you just counter their like Ancient Stirrings, and they just don't really have anything going on. Oh, another thing that I should maybe talk about is like are these like surgical extractions. It seems kind of weird to, you know, just play 2 extractions main. But the meta game was just like so defined that we kind of realized that it was like really good. Against Tron, you can Field of Ruin their Tron land and Surgical Extraction, so the game is basically over. It was great against Phoenix, and it was great against Dredge as well. And like these decks were just like the best decks in the format, and it was great against all of them. Obviously, if you play against like Humans and stuff, it sucks. But yeah, there was still some like applications to do with it. You can either like brainstorm it with Jace, or you can like brainstorm and then like extraction yourself to get rid of like, to just be able to shuffle and stuff like that. So obviously you would prefer to not have it in those matchups, but it still had some use. Like sometimes you can like extraction to have like an extra card for Logic Note and stuff like that. So yeah, let's go into the second deck. So I'm actually not sure if this is true, but I kind of feel like I have to include it. So when I was around like 19 to 20 years old, I was called like a Merfolk master, because all I did was that I just played Merfolk every day, all the time. And you know, at the beginning, people were making fun of me because it was just kind of a meme deck. You know, usually like kids play Merfolk. It seems like it doesn't really have that much play to it. And like the kind of the reason why I started playing that is that, you know, I didn't really have that much money to buy my own decks. So when I went to a tournament, I had to borrow decks. And some, you know, a lot of the time, the only deck I could borrow was Merfolk. So I was just like playing with it a lot. And as I was playing with it, I was kind of like finding out all these like small details about it, not only how to build the deck, but also how to play it. Like, it actually had a lot more play to it than people gave it credit for. Like, if you play against like a Grixis Control deck with like Snapcaster Mages, Wrath of Gods, Cryptic Commands, Electrolyzes, it was extremely difficult to like just play your cards correctly and attack correctly and stuff like that. Like, for example, you have like 2 Lords and Serval Adept. Well, if you attack with all of them and they have Snapcaster Mage, they can just bolt one of your Lords and trade with the other one, and that just wasn't really worth it. So you just wanted to attack with only the Serval Adept that had like Island anyway, and just the sequencing was really hard. Obviously, there were like matchups that were mostly about just like who kills the other player faster, and those matchups weren't really that skill intensive, but the matchups that were like more grindy, like more removal oriented, were extremely difficult, and I was just like able to play those matchups well, which was the reason why I was doing with the deck. Another reason was obviously the build. Most people just kinda, you know, put the Merfolks in, not really like thinking about the flexible spots. So, you know, when you look at the deck, obviously you play like Ether Vial, all the Lords, like Adept and stuff like that, but what do you with the other slots, right? And just people would like think it doesn't really matter, but it actually mattered a lot. Like, whether you draw a Dismember or Vapor Snag is a huge difference. Whether you draw Marrow Breachery or Kira is also a huge difference, and stuff like that. I really loved Remand in this deck, because the way you lost was that you just kind of run out of guys, right? Like, this deck, every creature gets better with another creature because they're just pumping each other, or it gives you more guys with like this Master Waves and stuff like that. So you just wanted to have more creatures, but you also needed some disruption. You know, there were like Splinter Twin in the format. There was like Birthing Pod that you needed to interact with, otherwise it's going to kill you. So I just found that like Remand is, you know, a card that you boarded out a lot. The disruption element wasn't really necessary, but even in the other matchups, you can still kind of like cycle it and trade the turn, but you draw a card which can be a creature. It also really works really well with Ether Vial, as we could see, for example, you know, when Shota Yasoka played his Steamer Wild deck, he also played a bunch of Remans in that deck, and it was great there. And yeah, they actually unbanned Wild Nakato for this tournament, and I was pretty scared about that, which is the reason why I actually played 2 Kira, 2 Tidebinder Mages, and 4 Vapor Snag. Because I was just afraid of aggro. In the end, there actually wasn't that many Zoo decks, so maybe having like a Dismember would be better. Dismember was like a lot better against the Twin decks. Not only that, obviously killing their guys better than bouncing it, but oftentimes you have like 1 or 2 Mutawalts, and then it's kind of awkward because you can't really play your spells. Like, most spells are like double blue mana. So if you have like 1 blue mana open when you pass a turn, they just play a Deceiver Exarch and tap your blue, and then what are you gonna do? You just Vapor Snag it, bounce it, and they do the same thing end of turn. But with Dismember, you could, even if they tap your island, you can still have Mutawald up, because, you know, Dismember is colorless, and kill the guy on their turn. Usually you didn't really, you know, there were some exceptions. Like, if you were killing them next turn, you obviously wanted to play around, like maybe them having like a Dispel with their twin and stuff like that. But in the games that were going longer, it was better to just kill their guy only when they put a twin on it. Because otherwise, you know, if you kill it immediately and they have another Deceiver Exarch, you're just gonna lose. So there were many things going on with this deck, and I think I actually went 8-1-1 with this deck as well, and my only loss was to my roommate that came to this Pro Tour with me. It was the first Pro Tour for both of us, and we were both doing really well. He was playing Burn, and, you know, game 1 he was on the play, he went like a Goblin Guide into Searing Blaze, just destroyed me, And game 2 he played like a turn 3 ensnaring bridge, and I just lost, so that sucked. But I ended up top 16ing. Well, anyways, I ended up in top 16 of this Pro Tour. That was my first Pro Tour. I think the last round I actually played against Martin Miller, and we decided to draw. Unfortunately for him, he ended up in top 25 and I was top 16. But we still, you know, got the points and qualifications and everything that we needed. So that was a really good experience. Definitely, you know, most people don't have a first Pro Tour like that. So that was great. Yeah, not only this tournament, but I even queued for this tournament with like Mono Blue. I won like, I was in like bunch of PTQ top 8s with Merfolk and stuff like that. So, you know, Merfolk is definitely close to my heart. So coming up at number 1 is the first GP that I ever won. It was a Grixis Control deck at Grand Prix Paris. And this is not number 1 because it's like the first GP that I ever won, but I actually thought that, like, I never felt like I had such a huge advantage in any tournament I ever played, before that or after that. This deck was just so good. So to give you some context, by far, what was considered to be by far the best deck in the format was really the Ancestors deck. For people who don't know, it was just like a deck with like Reflector Mage, like 2-3, like a 3-mana 2-3 that makes another guy, Collected Company, and Rally the Ancestors, which just like brings back all of your guys, then you can like sack them and kill your opponent and stuff like that. And this deck had like almost unlosable matchup against that. Like obviously sometimes you can stumble and stuff like that, so I'm a little bit exaggerating when I'm saying that the matchup was unlosable, but it was really, really good. You know, you had like all the best cards against them. They didn't really play removal, so both Kalitas and Jace were great against them. You had like cheap removal, you had a discard, I had like 3 dispels in a board to counter the cards that matter. You even had like a Ruinous Path, so like sometimes post-board they tried to kill you with Gideon and stuff like that, so you had like answers for that as well. And this deck was just like playing like a legacy deck in standard. Just like look at the deck, you have like fetchlands and duels, you have like Jace 4 Dig through times, which is by the way banned in legacy right now. Like all like cheap removal spell like Duress for like 1, Fire Impulse for 1. And an insane sideboard against like anything that can come up. You have like Planeswalkers to grind people out. So like people didn't really play this deck, they just played like a Dark Jeskai or Jeskai instead. But I kinda found that playing straight Grixis was just better. Like the white gave you like Crackling Doom and Mantis Rider, which both weren't really that good against the metagame in general. And you just had like a burst mana base, and this deck was also I think better against the 4-color deck because you were just better at grinding. They just had like a 3-mana 3/3 and a Crackling Doom, and you had like Planeswalkers and like black discard, you know, over that. So you had like 2 Chandras, for example. I actually played against Ben Stark in the finals of that GP, and the first game, it was a great game. So he was mana screwed, and I just, you know, but I just wasn't really playing anything. I was just playing land every turn, and he had a Disdainful Stroke in his hand or like some other counter, and he wasn't playing anything because he was like afraid that I have like only one good card, like 1 Dig through time or 1 Chandra. So if he like taps out for like a Mantis Rider, you know, I'm just gonna punish him. But I had a Duress in my hand the entire game, which I didn't play because I knew he was sitting on the counter, and I just waited, and eventually my entire hand was just lands, I think, like maybe like 1 Grasp or something. If he was just like playing his creatures, I would like lose. Obviously he didn't know my hand. So I was holding this Duress, I drew Chandra, I Duress him, discarded Disdainful Stroke, played Chandra, and he like writes down -6. I was like, no, wait. I discarded my hand, like 5 or 4 lands, and drew like into a new hand, which was like a 2 Dig through times, removal splits and stuff like that. So the game ended right there. Actually, thinking back, I think that, you know, from like turn 4 or whatever, he should have been just jamming because he was stacked on lands, and you know, this kind of a scenario was kind of inevitable. Like I know that it's just seems bad to play Mantis Rider when I can like kill it on top and play like a Dig Through Time or something. But what do you like expect to happen? Like eventually, I'm not really gonna play my spell into his counter, and eventually I'm gonna be able to get to a point where I can go like end of turn, Dig Through Time, untap, do something good on my turn, or you know, I just draw the Duress. So I actually think he potentially made a mistake, but it was you know, even the second game was really good. This deck was just, I don't know, I think I was like on the top of my game. I made the Platinum that year, and that was just all based on like these Jace decks. Before this Grixis deck, I played like either Jeskai or Dark Jeskai decks. And even though this deck was like slightly different, right? You like change the color, it was like the same style of a deck with like same play patterns. So I was just like mastering it. Like I think I was like 9th at GP Prague. Then I like went like 8-2 with Jeskai at one of the Pro Tours. Then I went like X3 in like 2 GPs, and then I won this GP. I just think it was because, you know, the meta game wasn't really changing. It was still like, you know, Siege Rhinos and Reddies and Jeskai. It was all the same for like almost like 8 months or something, and I was just always playing the same style of a deck. And you know, the meta game shifted a little bit, and I just knew that the wipe wasn't necessary, and I went for this deck. And like I don't know, I just like had like one Dragon Master Outcast, one Dragon Silumgar, just like cards that seem super random, but they were just great for me in the tournament. Like I don't know how I was that good back then. I don't really understand. I probably just got old, or I just don't really care that much anymore. I don't really know. But yeah, that's gonna be all for today. If you liked the video, please click on the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye.